This is Christopher John Björkness. It is August 1st, 2024. In my book, Satanic Secrets of Jesus Christ, Volumes 1 and 2, I talked about the Eucharist and what it really signifies, the fact that the wine, Jesus' blood, is actually serpent's venom, that Jesus on the cross is the serpent in the tree of knowledge, and the tree of knowledge is a grapevine. You can see the grapes. I'm sorry, everything is reversed. And I went into great detail about all of that and explained it all in depth. But I'm working on volumes 3 and 4 of this series, Satanic Secrets of Jesus Christ. And I found a very, very important Kabbalistic source, no less than the Messiah, son of David of his time, Moses David Valley. He taught Luzzatto, and Luzzatto and that circle in Padua, Italy, considered him to be the Messiah. And he compiled a book of selections of his ideas, and it was called the Sefer Halakhutim. And in the Sefer Halakhutim, he wrote a lot about Christianity. And he published a series, I think 9 volumes or so, in Italian also, denouncing Christianity and revealing what the Kabbalists say about Christianity. And it vindicates everything I said. And it even adds a little bit more, and we're going to get into that. It's very interesting. So in this book, I prove that the Eucharist wine is the serpent's venom, and Jesus represents the grapevine, which is the tree of knowledge, and the serpent in that grapevine, and the serpent's venom becomes his blood, becomes his wine. And when Christians consume it, they kill themselves and they curse themselves to be boiling in hell in excrement. And for 2 decades, I've been showing the Talmudic sources which state that Jesus is boiling in excrement. And I proved that that related to the idea that he mocked the sages, the scribes and Pharisees, and that's the punishment for mocking the sages, is to be condemned to boil in semen and boil in excrement. And that's supposed to be Jesus's fate. And I'll show you those Talmudic passages. But this Kabbalist, Moses David Valley in Sefer Halakhutim, points out that the chalice, which is utilized for the Eucharist wine, represents a toilet. And in this book, I discussed the 11th century idea that people began to oppose the Eucharist because it is implicit in the Eucharist that if you consume the bread, which is the flesh of Christ, it becomes poop after it's digested. And if you drink the wine, it becomes urine, and the poop and the urine end up in the toilet. Now, this Kabbalist points out that that toilet is the chalice, which means, I don't think he says this is my insight, that the original Holy Grail was also this toilet, which is also the cauldron in which this boiling, noxious stew of sewage, of feces and urine, Jesus and all Christians who consume this Eucharist are fated to spend their time in eternity in hell in this boiling toilet filled with the defecation of the Eucharist. And the Kabbalists believe that this is how Jesus, Messiah, son of Joseph, gets rectified for the world to come, is this process of being consumed and defecated and boiling in that defecation. And another very esoteric Kabbalistic idea I've been talking about relates to this idea that's found, I think, in Psalms 139, verse 5, that there's a front side and a back side. And the Godhead was initially had a male face on the front and a female face on the back. And then it became divided, like Adam became divided into Adam and Eve. And eventually in the world to come, they will unite face to face as lovers instead of being back to back with the female's face on the back and the male's face on the front. And the female is considered evil and the backside is considered evil. Moses slayed an Israelite. And Vali explained that Israelite had a father who was an Egyptian soldier, just like Jesus, according to the Toldat Yeshu, had a Roman soldier as his father. So they are both mamzers, bastards, and troublemakers. Brilliant intellectual troublemakers is the Kabbalistic view of these mamzers. And that this son, born of an Israelite woman and an Egyptian soldier, poked a hole in the Yod Hey Vav Hey, and that hole breached through to the backside. You've heard me talk again and again about the Sitra Achra, the other side. Well, this is another Kabbalistic interpretation of left and right, of the other side is the left side, and the right side is the holy side, Sitra de Kedusha, Sitra de Yamina, the holy side, the right-hand side, and then you have Sitra de Smola, the left-hand side, which is also the Sitra Achra, which is the other side. That can also be interpreted as front side and back side. The back side is the ass. The ass has an anus. So when Moses killed this half Israelite mamzer who bored a hole through and created the anus. Now, what passes through the anus? Pardon all this, I'm just the messenger. What passes through the anus is the defecation of the Eucharist. So this is the process by which Jesus comes to boil in excrement, which is described in the Talmud, but the Talmud never revealed the fact that this represents a toilet. And that's something that Luzzatto revealed. Another one of the things that I've been talking about for decades, and I put in this book, is that Jesus is Samael. Jesus is Satan. Jesus is the serpent in the Garden of Eden, and the cross is the tree of knowledge of good and evil, which the Zohar calls the tree of death. And this guy, Moses David Vali, the Messiah, son of David of his generation, vindicates all of that and expands upon all of that. So this is a very great source that I'm going to incorporate into volumes 3, 4. I've even got a 5th volume in the works. Please excuse me if I'm not creating as many videos these days or tweeting as much or having as much of a presence online, because I really want to get these books done. It's vitally important because I have decoded everything, and my decoding of Behemoth and Leviathan is what can save us, if people can understand what all that means. And I want to get that out. I want to get it out in print form. I've been working on this for years. I've got a couple thousand, maybe even 3,000 pages at this point that I have to go through and polish and get ready for publication. And so I'm working sometimes 16 hours a day to try to get this done. So forgive me if I appear a little careworn and not at optimal form, but I'm going to get this out. I'm going to get this done. I want to thank everyone who has been helping me to do that and sustaining me. I'm really on the margins of going under. And one of the reasons I want to get this done is because if I become homeless, at least I'll have these books out. And I won't, because if I'm homeless, I won't have an office to do all that. But if you'd like to contribute, you can do so at CJB Books I'm very grateful to those who have. And thank you so much if you decide to help me out and get this all done while the opportunity still exists. So in addition to this, this Kabbalist, there is a man who puts out classes on the internet, and he is extremely knowledgeable about Kabbalah, and he also vindicates the things that I've been saying for decades. And his name is Mike Matledge, and I'm going to play for you a little bit of what he says on these subjects, because he does some very important translations. I think they're his translations. I'm not sure. There's not a lot of information about this guy, Moses David Volley, out there on the internet. It's very much like what Shabbatai Tzevi was and Jacob Frank was when I first started exposing them online in 2006. There was almost nothing out there about that or about Zionism. And I, together with many others, was one of the pioneers in getting that information out. And one of the things I want to accomplish is to get people studying Moses David Volley. I think from what I've been able to glean so far, he is probably, together with the Sefer HaMashiv, the most important Kabbalistic source on the real meaning of Christianity and the danger that it poses, and the fact that Jesus is Satan, the Eucharist is snake venom. It is meant to curse you and to send you to hell as the scapegoat for the Israelites. You are being condemned to boil in feces for eternity inside of a boiling cauldron of a toilet, which is the Holy Grail and the chalice of communion. And that is all done very deceptively. That was the intent from the beginning. And I've hashed it all out. I got all the Old Testament passages, the Talmudic and the Kabbalistic proof. And I've already worked that out in this. And now I've got even more to further substantiate what I have already shown mountains of evidence for. So let's listen to what Mike Matledge explains about Jesus being Satan, and about the Eucharist being feces and urine and a prophecy. The prophecy is that this cup represents the fact that since Jesus mocked the sages, he is doomed to boil in excrement in hell. And he pointed out that this relates to this Israelite who was the product of the Egyptian and the Israelite woman, and Moses killed him, and that bored the hole from the front side to the back side, from the holy side to the other side, from the right-hand side to the left-hand side.
You know? Because the hair is the goat. Because goat's hair.
The hair is the goat, relates to Mount Seir. Seir is in Edom, and it relates to the idea that Esau is hairy like a goat and represents the scapegoat.
Because it's Guvarot. Therefore, the secret of the scapegoat to Azazel. These two names, Azza and Azazel.
Azazel is Samael in Leviticus chapter 16. It talks about the fact that one of the expiation goats, the scapegoats, is given in the wilderness to Azazel, and the other one is offered up in the sanctuary, and its blood is put on the horns of the altar.
This is why there is two goats. One is safe, the other one is killed. They are eventually both killed, but one is safe, and then... But on it, it will carry the transgressions. So what they say? Jesus carries our transgressions, right?
Mm-hmm. Jesus carries our transgressions. Jesus is the scapegoat, as I've been saying for decades.
On the goat. They're right. It carries their transgressions. Because they're the shoulders that carry Eretz Gezerah to a desolated area, which they will go. This is the secret of the Orla, the foreskin, which is Lilith and her mate, Azza and Azazel.
Lilith and her mate. Lilith is the female aspect of Satan, and Samael is the male aspect of Satan. And it was Lilith and Samael who tempted Eve in the Garden of Eden and who impregnated Eve with the child Cain that produced the Gentiles.
And that's the secret of the foreskin, or the clip of the foreskin?
Yeah.
Gentiles and Samael and Lilith are all called the foreskin. And just as the foreskin is circumcised on the 8th day and cut off, the Gentiles will be cut off, completely exterminated, and eaten just as the foreskin is eaten.
Yeah. So they are Azza and Azazel, Lilith and Samael. Jesus is a scapegoat. Is he? Really? Good. You're right. He's Samael, the Satan.
Jesus is Samael, the Satan. I've been saying that, and I've been ridiculed for saying that for over 20 years. Let's hear it again.
So they are Azza and Azazel, Lilith and Samael. Jesus is a scapegoat. Is he? Really? Good. You're right. He's Samael, the Satan, which is the secret of Yesod of that side. This is why he's called the Nazarene or the Nazarite. Nazir means a sprout. They're all grafted in, this little sprout, this little twig. That's Yesod Sam. Because he is the disgusting one from Nazareth, which is the abomination. He is literally the aspect of the Yesod of the backside. And in this, it is garmented Samael to seduce and lead those astray. And that is why he was crucified on a tree. Because a tree is Yesod, but his tree was a tree of death.
So just as I've been saying, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil is the tree of death. Jesus is Samael. Jesus is Satan. And when he says that he is Yesod of the backside, of the other side, Yesod is the foundation. It is also called tzaddik, meaning the righteous one. So Jesus, it is the moon, and it is the phallus of Tiferet, which is the male aspect of the Godhead. It is Yod-Heh. The earth is Malkut, Shekinah, and the other side, the backside of Shekinah, is Lilith. And the moon is where Shekinah has sex with Esau and Jacob to produce Messiah, son of Joseph, who is of the backside. On the Gentiles, it's on the backside. And Messiah, son of David. There is a Messiah, son of Joseph, and a Messiah, son of David, of the backside, of the Gentiles, of the Sitra Achra, of the Klipot, the Kelipah. There is also a Messiah, son of David, and a Messiah, son of Joseph, of the front side, the holy side, the right-hand side. So everything is replicated. There are two opposite and contrary, but identical universes. And the Gentiles are the evil universe of the foreskin of Samael that has to be circumcised, has to be cut off, has to be completely exterminated and either buried in the dung heap, boiling in hot excrement and semen, or consumed as the Leviathan and the Behemoth at the banquet fest, the wedding feast at the end of the present world, Olam Hazeh, and at the initiation of the world to come, Olam Haba. And that is what Mike Matledge is explaining to you, is that this is related to Yesod, to the two Messiahs. Jesus is the Messiah, son of Joseph, and there is also the Messiah, son of David, and they are produced through Shekinah sleeping with Esau and Jacob. When she sleeps with Esau, it produces Messiah, son of Joseph. When she sleeps with Jacob, it produces Messiah, son of David. So let's have a listen to what he says about the Eucharist. And again, he, in this video, he translates a lot from Sefer Halakudim. And that's a very important book explaining the real meaning of what Christianity has always been. It is a subversion. It is the curse of death. It is the curse of damnation because the scapegoat is damned. The scapegoat has all the sins of Israel unjustly put upon it. Just as Job suffered unjustly in the heavenly court as the scapegoat, as I explained, as the Zohar explains, that story of Job is the story of the scapegoat on trial unjustly in the heavenly court, accused by his father, Samael, by Satan, of all the crimes that Israel had done. And Job was a Gentile, and Jesus is simply Job. Jesus is repetition of the story of Job. He is put on trial unjustly. He is the righteous man. Job was the blameless man. Righteous in terms of Yesod. Yesod means means foundation, but it's also called Tzaddik, meaning the righteous one. So let's hear what he has to say. I've explained most of that in other videos and in my book. So if you're interested in all that, I suggest you hop on over to my website, cjbbooks.com, and pick up these books and learn this stuff, because our lives depend upon knowing all this, because they're setting us up to cut us off, to eliminate us, because they consider us foreskins, which is Samael, the devil. They think that we are the devil. The foreskin is the kelipot, the shell. In order to release the light, the spark, they have to cut off the shell, break the shell, get rid of us, exterminate all Gentiles before we enter the world to come, which is happening now. We are in the birth pangs, the 9-month period of this messianic age in which they really want to heavily start killing us off.
And the head of Berea, Yetzirah, and Asiya is called the head of foxes. Klippa, Kedusha. Creation.
I think there's where I want to be.
And there they say, it turns into blood and it turns into flesh. They are cannibalistic. They're eating humans. Certainly, this is the mazal, that they are prophesying and they do not know what they are prophesying.
So he's discussing the Eucharist. And for those of you who don't know, Jesus at the Last Supper broke the bread and said, "Eat this. This is my flesh." And he gave wine and said, "This is my blood." Drinking blood is completely non-kosher. You're not supposed to do it, but I'll explain that in a bit. But that's what he's talking about. And then that became the ritual in the church of the Eucharist, of consuming the bread and the wine, which is supposed to be the flesh and the blood of Christ. But again, there was an objection to that, because that becomes feces and urine. And that is the prophecy of Jesus boiling in excrement in hell.
Every time they use this Kiddush cup.
They're prophesying, and they're not knowing they're prophesying.
Yes. Every time they use their Kiddush cup, every time they do communion, they are prophesying. They don't know that they're prophesying. What are they prophesying?
Well, that's what I want to know.
Because the cup is the secret of the nukva of Zeranpin.
The nukva, the Zeranpin, is the female aspect of the lower 6 Sephirot. And the nukva is the female aspect of that, the seventh Malkut, and it represents the womb. And on the back side, it represents Lilith. On the front side, it represents Shekinah.
As is known. So when we do Shabbat, the cup is the vessel, the nukva of Zah. Their cup, you created me front and back. Their cup is also the cup of the nukva. It's the cup of Lilith, the backside. For that is where...
Again, Lilith is the female aspect of Satan. Samael is the male aspect of Satan. Shekinah is the female aspect of God.
Where the Zuhama, the poison of God, is. The poison of the Nakash is, rather. The poison of the backside, which is the secret of the...
The Nakash is the serpent. And I'm going to be doing some videos shortly that explain all that. So I suggest you like, share, and subscribe, especially subscribe, because I'm going to teach you a lot about the Nakash, about the serpent. Nakash in Gematria is 358. Mashiach, Messiah, is also 358. The twin serpents, the holy serpent and the evil serpent, the crooked serpent and the straight serpent, on both the front and the back side. There are 4 of them. I'm going to be explaining all that, and it's really fascinating because Nakash really means the bronze or the shining one, and we're going to get into heavily into that, and I'm going to be decoding all of that for you. So again, please like, share, and especially subscribe.
Nukva of that side. Because you made me front and back, he made a hole for what? Waste. That's the hole that the son of the Israelite woman made. It's the hole of waste.
So he's saying that there is an anus through which this waste passes, and this waste represents the Eucharist, and the chalice of the Eucharist is the toilet where this waste is deposited, and then it is brought to a boil, and Jesus and Christians are boiled in this boiling holy grail of feces and urine derived from the bread of the Eucharist and the wine of the Eucharist, which is snake venom.
This is the evil side, the evil one, called Yeshu HaNotzri.
Yeshu HaNotzri is the code words that they use for Jesus Christ. And Yeshu is an acronym meaning may his name be blotted out and forgotten forever.
Who seduces and leads astray. And he is adjudicated for this, measure for measure, within that cup, in boiling excrement. Now, I posted on...
As I explained in my books, and I'm the first one to do this, Jesus plays the role of Satan. So Jesus is the tempter. Jesus is the accuser. Jesus is the prosecutor in the heavenly court. And Jesus provides the din and the power of Gevurah and din on the left-hand side to punish. And the Jews are given the mercy of the right-hand side of Hesed, because they pass off all of their sins onto the Gentiles. And that is the process of sweetening the dinim. And I'm going to be explaining all that. It's really fascinating, and explains why they do what they do to the host nations that they enter into in this process of passing off their sins onto the Gentiles, so that the punishment is sweetened. It turns into mercy by unjustly punishing the Gentiles as scapegoats for the sins of the Jews. And that's what Jesus does. When you bear your cross and become a Christian and consume the wine that becomes urine through your digestion and the bread that becomes feces, you are creating that bubbling stew in the toilet of the Holy Grail, in which you will be damned forever for the sins of Israel as Israel's scapegoat. You are doing that voluntarily.
On my wall, getting 57A.
So let's have a look at, excuse me, at Gittin 57A that he refers to 20 years ago in my book, The Manufacture and Sale of St. Einstein. I think I was one of the first, if not the first, to point out that Gittin 57A relates to a Reuven 21B, excuse me, and Jesus is condemned to boil in hot excrement because he mocked the sages, the scribes and the Pharisees. So let's, wow, it looks like Jesus is out to get me. He's going to strangle me for revealing all his secrets, all his satanic secrets that they've kept hidden for 2,000 years. And I had to come along and decode it and screw it all up for him. And now that I've done that, this information is getting out and they want to talk about it because they think they can recruit Noahides by revealing what Christianity is all about. And that's one of the reasons that after my books came out, you see a lot of Jews and Noahides discussing all this stuff. So what is it I wanted to show you? So have a look at that. That shows that Jesus is on the cross. The cross is the tree of knowledge of good and evil. The tree of knowledge of good and evil is a grapevine. Jesus's blood is the wine of that vine. Jesus is the serpent on the tree of knowledge of good and evil, offering up the knowledge of his gnosis, which is where the word Gnosticism comes from. That wine is, in fact, snake venom, as I'm going to prove to you with a couple good Torah quotes. So this is a title page. I think, though, that this is a somewhat sanitized and abbreviated version of it. I want to get an original of Sefer Halakudim. I want to find out where he was translating from. So there's Sefer Halakudim, and it's by Moses David Vali, also called Moshe David Vala. And he also wrote in Italian, I believe, a 9-volume series discussing what Christianity really means. So this is from the Babylonian Talmud. This is the now famous quote that talks about Jesus. This has caused what they call anti-Semitism and caused the Catholic Church and others to ban the Talmud and created great anger among Christians against Jews throughout the Middle Ages and beyond. Onkelos then went and raised Jesus the Nazarene from the grave through necromancy, and that is also Jesus the Nazarene is also referred to cryptically and viciously as Yeshu HaNostri. Onkelos said to him, "Who is most important in that world where you are now?" Jesus said to him, "The Jewish people." Onkelos asked him, "Should I then attach myself to them in this world?" Jesus said to him, "Their welfare you shall seek, their misfortune you shall not seek, for anyone who touches them is regarded as if he were touching the apple of his eye." Note that Jesus is the defender of the Jewish people. He is seducing, and he is himself. He is seducing Christians to become the scapegoat for the sins of Israel, so that you are unjustly blamed for all the sins and crimes that Israel has committed, and you will boil in feces in hell forever. Onkelos said to him, "What is the punishment of that man?" Meaning Jesus, a euphemism for Jesus himself in the next world, that is, the world to come. Jesus said to him, "He is punished with boiling excrement, As the master said, anyone who mocks the words of the sages will be sentenced to boiling excrement. And this was his sin as he mocked the words of the sages. Jesus very famously criticized the scribes and Pharisees, who are the sages, the Chazal. This is from the Babylonian Talmud tractate Erubin, folio 21b. Whereas with respect to the words of the sages, anyone who transgresses the words of the sages is liable to receive the death penalty. This teaches that whoever mocks the words of the sages will be sentenced to boiling excrement, which results from the weariness of the flesh of man. This is why we have Noahides. Now, the original Noahides were the Muslims, and then the Freemasons became a form of Noahidism, teaching some of these secrets. But the actual Noahides today are putting this information out so that Christians abandon Christianity and become Noahides. That's like stepping out of the frying pan and into the fire, because Noahides are slaves. So not only does the Talmud talk about Jesus boiling in excrement, I was also the first to bring this up to the modern audience, that the Zohar, the Bible of Kabbalah, the highest text in Judaism, says that not only Jesus and all Christians, but also Muhammad and all Muslims are in this dung heap fertilizing the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And it all relates to Lilith, the female aspect of Satan, and Samael is the male aspect of Satan. And in my book, The Manufacture and Sale of St. Einstein, I pointed out that this is also in the Zohar. The Talmud stuff is much better known and better understood, and I'm trying to get people looking into Kabbalah. Kabbalah is the real truth about what the oral tradition says. So this is from the Zohar, volume 3, folio 282a. From the side of idolatry, Shabbatai, Saturn, is called Lilith, mixed dung, poop, excrement, on account of the filth mixed from all kinds of dirt and worms, into which they throw dead dogs and dead asses, the sons of Esau, the Christians, and Ishmael, the Arabs and the Muslims. Esau is now the Romans, the Europeans, and the Christians. Ishmael is now all Muslims, was originally Arabs, and that has also added the Eurasianist behemoth of the communists and the Marxists. And there, Jesus and Mohammed, who are dead dogs, are buried among them. Jesus is in the excrement together with all Christians. Muhammad is in the excrement together with all Muslims. She Lilith is the grave of idolatry, where they bury the uncircumcised, the foreskins. They bury the foreskin. This is representing Gentiles being cut off and exterminated and buried in Gehenna, in hell, who are dead dogs, abomination and bad smell, feces and urine smell horrible, soiled and fetid, a bad family. She, Lilith, is the ligament which holds fast the mixed multitude, the Erev Rav, the mixture of the Egyptian sorcerers with the Israelites during the Exodus, which is mixed among Israel. And I think it's Armilus who is the guardian angel of the Erev Rav, the mixed multitude, and which holds fast bone and flesh, that is, the sons of Esau and Ishmael, Christians and Muslims and communists, dead bone and unclean flesh, torn of the beasts of the field, of which it is said, ye shall cast it to the dogs. they tell you that you have to follow Judeo-Christian values. The Judeo values are from the Talmud and the Zohar and the Old Testament, which states that you live in dung, in hell. Jesus and Muhammad are boiling in dung, in hell. That is your fate. You are scapegoats for the sins of Israel. You are foreskins who will be circumcised, cut off, killed, so that the Jews in the world to come can live in paradise, the Garden of Eden, below the ground, as I'm going to be adding additional proof in my next few videos. So please, again, like, share, and especially subscribe so you don't miss that. It's incredible what I have turned up to add to what I've already been publishing about for 20 years and what I've discovered throughout my entire lifetime. The important thing is that you understand this is their perception of you. You are the backside. You are the anus. The defecation passes to you, and you are placed in defecation that is boiling for eternity, not for what you did. You did nothing wrong. You are blameless. You are righteous, like Jesus, like Job. But because in the heavenly court, they trick Samael by giving him a scapegoat on Yom Kippur, by offering him goats on each new moon, by, in the ancient world, sacrificing goats out in the desert to him. All of their sins are passed on to you, blameless ones, and you become the scapegoat, the hairy one, the Seir, like Mount Seir and Edom, who bears the burden for all of these sins. And your supposed creator, Samael and Lilith, the serpent in the Garden of Eden, betrays you and prosecutes you in the heavenly court on Yom Kippur, accuses you of all these sins you have not committed, releases Israel from the burden of all its guilt because it is confused and plays with this scapegoat in the heavenly court. And then the unjust God of Israel agrees with all that, puts the din, the punishment onto you, sweetening the din for the Jews. So the dinim pass from the Jews to you. You get condemned. You are the foreskin that is cut off, circumcised on the 8th day, buried in the dung heap, boiling in dung in hell forever. And you disappear from the world. And the present world, Olam Hazeh, then ceases to exist. You, the backside, the other side, the left-hand side cease to exist. And the right-hand side, the holy side, the front side is rectified. You are nullified. The spark is released from the shell of you, the husk of Samael, the foreskin that covers that husk, which is Samael and Lilith, which is you, is excised, circumcised, buried in the dung heap, and condemned to hell to be nullified and annihilated forever and ever. And then the world is the utopia, the Jewish utopia of the world to come, Olam Haba, in Gan Eden, in the new paradise, the Garden of Eden, which they enter through the cave of the patriarchs below ground. And you go up to the North Pole in the north of the Garden of Eden. Gan Eden is in the east. And you go to hell, and they go to heaven. And you cease to exist, and they become immortal androgynes. And there will be 600,000 of them, and none of you. Please understand, this is what they believe. This is what they are carrying out. This is why the world is in turmoil. This is why they want to exterminate billions of people within the next 7 years. It's already begun, the birth pangs of it, to produce the Messiah, son of David. The 9 months began on October 7th. So we are in this. You need to understand this. All of our survival depends upon it. And I am showing you the irrefutable, documented proof. And you can hear it from these people themselves who believe this stuff. I am fully vindicated. And not only that, it's even worse than what I've been saying. And I've got the proof for that now. So in either volume 1 or volume 2 of this, I talked about Stercoranism, which there was a dispute between Christians whether they should continue with this practice of the Eucharist, given the fact that if you consume the transubstantiation of Christ into bread and wine, that bread and wine ends up as poop and pee that is defecated. And that's the toilet that it all goes into, which becomes a cauldron where you're going to boil in hell forever. Now, that doesn't talk about that, but it does talk about the fact that when you consume bread and wine, they turn into poop and pee. And I wrote about that in this book. So let's see what good old Wikipedia has to say about that. Stercoranism. Conversely, opponents of transubstantiation accused its believers of the same based on the pretext that the Eucharist, upon being transubstantiated into the body of Christ and then eaten, would be subjected to such digestive processes, thus implying that the flesh of Christ is turned into feces. That's the prophecy of Jesus boiling in excrement, as it says in the Sefer Halakudim by Moses David Vali. Vali is V-A-L-I. So, as I was as I thoroughly proved in this book and in volume 2 and in my book, Beware the World to Come, Jesus' blood is the wine. The wine is the grapes of the grapevine of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. But all of that, when Jesus transforms from a being of light into a serpent, he is given 10 curses after tempting Eve. He loses his appendages, his legs, and he becomes forced to crawl on his belly. And then the Nachash transforms from being the shining one into being the serpent. He is not initially the serpent. It wasn't actually a serpent that convinced Eve to consume the gnosis. It was more Jesus, the light bringer, Phanes Protogenus, who came from heaven to provide humanity with this knowledge of light. But the wine wasn't ripe yet. It was serpent's venom. Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer talks about these 10 curses that were put upon this angel of light to convert him into a snake for wanting to build a kingdom of his own as a supposed fallen angel. He was initially the greatest, the highest angel, Lucifer, at the right hand of God. His place was taken by Michael, by the sun, the planet sun. And he then became the serpent, but he's still the shining one. And I've got a lot to say about that that's really going to blow your minds. But here is Deuteronomy chapter 32, verses 32 and 33. For their vine is the vine of Sodom, and the fields of Gomorrah. The Gentiles are the evil of the vine, the serpent's venom. Their grapes are grapes of gall. Their clusters are bitter. Their wine is the poison of dragons. Dragons is the Leviathan. It becomes the Christians. And the cruel venom of asps. So Jesus's blood, that wine, is poison to kill you Christians. And it becomes the urine in the boiling dung cauldron of the chalice of the Eucharist and the Holy Grail, which in hell become a cauldron in which you're going to boil forever. Proverbs chapter 23, verses 29 to 35. Who hath woe, who hath sorrow, who hath contentions? Who hath babbling? Who hath wounds without cause? Who hath redness of eyes? The drunk who consumes the wine. They that tarry long at the wine, they that seek that go to seek mixed wine. Look not thou upon the wine when it is red, when it giveth its color in the cup. That's the blood. The cup is the cup of God's wrath. It is a toilet filled with the excrement of the Eucharist. When it moveth itself aright, at the last it biteth like a serpent. The serpent is Samael. The serpent is Jesus. His venom is his blood, is his wine, which you voluntarily drink so that you can bear your own cross and, like Jesus, boil in excrement in hell forever. And stingeth like an adder. Thine eyes shall behold strange women, and thine heart shall utter perverse things. Yea, thou shalt be as he that sitteth down in the midst of the sea, the Leviathan, or he that lieth upon the top of a mast. They have stricken me, shalt thou say, and I was not sick. They have beaten me, and I have felt it not. Christians are blind to all their martyrdom and their torture because they are drunk on the serpent's venom of the blood of Christ. When shall I awake? I will seek it yet again. They go back again and again for the Eucharist. This is one of my insights. This is not something I've seen yet in the Kabbalah, but I bet you down the road I'm going to find a source, just as I came across Sefer Halakudim, just as I came across Sefer HaMashiv, which vindicated me for saying that Satan is, that Jesus is Satan, that Jesus is Samael, that Jesus is Messiah, son of Joseph, that Jesus is the reincarnation of Esau. I was saying all this before I found these Kabbalistic sources, which said exactly those same things. And I suspect eventually I'm going to find something that proves that in the Torah, it says that you do not cook a young goat in its mother's milk. You don't take from that animal twice and boil the baby in its mother's milk. The Eucharist is composed of the flesh and the wine. The wine represents the milk in this context. The young goat is the scapegoat, the kid goat. It also talks about Jesus representing that verse. I forget where it is in the Torah, but it talks about offering up the unblemished kid goat as the sacrifice. Sacrifice on Yom Kippur is the kid goat. Esau is the goat, hairy like a goat. To be the first crypto Jew, Jacob put on the skin of a young goat, a kid goat, to mimic Esau, Seir, Mount Seir, Edom. So Jesus is this young goat, and by consuming in the Eucharist both the wine and the bread, the flesh and the blood, you are consuming the flesh in its mother's milk effectively. And I have a Talmudic passage which makes that connection between these things. This is Exodus 23:19. Bring the best of the first fruits of your soil to the house of the Lord your God. Do not cook a young goat in its mother's milk. Jesus is the young scapegoat, the kid goat. The mother's milk in this context is his blood. So you are violating that. You are also violating the prescription against consuming blood at all, because the blood is the soul. And when you consume the blood of Christ, you are consuming the soul of Satan. You are absorbing and becoming Satan yourself, destined for the dung heap, destined for nullification, destined to be annihilated. So Exodus 34 gives the same passage. It's given 3 times, which is significant. It's also given in Deuteronomy 14:21. Do not cook a young goat in its mother's milk. And then we have in the Babylonian Talmud how these are tied together with the proscription against consuming blood. So you're never supposed to consume blood at all, but in the context of the Eucharist, of eating the flesh and the blood at the same time, it's like cooking the kid goat, the scapegoat, Jesus, in his mother's milk. Is that derivation that Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi taught ugly, that you derive a new one? The verse states with regard to an animal's blood, you shall not eat it. You shall pour it upon the earth as water, like Cain spilled Abel's blood and the earth drank it up. And the next verse adds, you shall not eat it, that it may go well with you and with your children after you. You're not supposed to consume blood. You do that in the Eucharist. And that blood is snake's venom. It's poison. It kills you. Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi teaches that the redundant second verse is not referring to the prohibition of blood. Rather, the verse is speaking of the prohibition of meat cooked in milk, teaching that it is prohibited for consumption. So that ties it all together. Those are the many ways that Christians curse themselves by consuming the Eucharist, the blood and the wine, the flesh and the blood of Christ, through transubstantiation, which becomes through digestion, excrement, which ends up in the toilet of the Holy Grail, of the chalice of communion, which is raised to a boiling temperature in hell, where Jesus is punished forever for mocking the sages, the scribes, and the Pharisees. And you become, like Jesus, the scapegoat offered up on Yom Kippur, so that your father, Satan, whose soul you have now consumed as the blood of the Eucharist, can falsely accuse you of all the sins of Israel and send you to hell, where you will sit in that toilet of boiling excrement forever and ever. That is what these people think of you. That was the plan from the beginning when they concocted Christianity, to dupe you into abandoning all the supernatural protection of your ancestral gods and give yourself over to Samael and Lilith, and voluntarily take upon yourselves all the sins of Adam and all the sins of Israel, so that you, like Job, like Jesus, are the scapegoat in the heavenly court, who is sentenced to damnation in boiling excrements forever and ever, because those Israelites sinned a lot. You're going to suffer horribly in order to sweeten the din of their punishments, so that they obtain the mercy, the chesed of the Lord in the world to come. And because you are the foreskin of Samael and Lilith, you will be cut off. You will be circumcised on the 8th day, when the darkness shines with the shining one, the Nachash, the serpent. And I'll explain all that to you guys soon, I hope. Please be patient with me. I am working my ass off every day, all day, working harder and harder, pushing myself as hard as I can to get these books out. I'm only barely scratching the surface of what I have in the books that I'm about to publish. But I wanted to let you guys see this vindication of my life's work in the words of believers of this. And I want to give you guys a heads up that there are Noahides out there who are now exposing these same things, so that Christians become convinced to become Noahides instead of being Christians. Don't step into that trap. Don't become a Freemason. Don't become a Noahide. Don't become a Muslim. All of those are enslavement. They're going to have 2,800 slaves they plan for, also in the Talmud, grabbing hold of the skirts of the Jews to be their slaves. But those people are also destined to be exterminated. They just want Shabbos Goyim in this transitionary period. when the robot technology will take over the role of Esau as the soldier, the mercenary, and the slave of Jacob. And please understand, their aim is to kill all of us, and we have got to stop them. I have given you the proof. Big lawyers, let's get them in the courts. Let's expose all this to the public. People in media, warn our fellow human beings that we are being led into this trap by Judaism, by Christianity, by Islam, by Marxism, by capitalism that has been subverted. All of these forces are driving us into this toilet of boiling excrement on purpose. It's deliberate. We don't have to allow it to happen. We can stop it if we work together to expose this and organize politically to bring it to an end and save ourselves from it. These are not canards. These are not lies. This is real. It's happening. I've proven it. And I'm going to get my books out soon. And this is irrefutable. No one has shown that this is not true. Quite the opposite. They are now themselves coming out and boasting about it. And I said 25 years ago that that would happen as the Messianic age commences. They always plan for the fact that as they gain power, they could openly discuss this themselves, and they are doing it. That is not a good sign. That is a horrific sign that the trigger is being pulled and we are about to be exterminated. We got to stop it. Thank you so much for listening to what I have to say. Please visit my website, CJBBooks.com. You can find my books there if you'd like to contribute to help me get through this period to at least to the point where I can get these books published and out there so it's all on the record forever as my gift to humanity for eternity. If there's any humanity left after all this, I want to thank the people who have contributed. If you would like to join them and help me, you can do so at my website, CJBBooks.com. On certain of my channels, you'll also find links where you can donate in the description below. Please subscribe. I've got a lot more coming out that's it's mind-blowing, it's horrifying, but you got to understand it if you want to survive. Thank you for watching. I'll see you all next time. Goodbye for now.